I'll ask the first question. These were both extremely interesting topics. And only toward the end, Dalia, did anyone address the actual topic? Which is and actually completely fine with me. I mean, because they're very interesting discussions. But I'm curious, about both from Abbas's perspective, kind of charting historical trajectory, and Dalia in terms of what Muslims are doing now and into the future. Would you sort of trace a change in the way Muslims consider themselves? The sort of Abrahamic American vision is a very kind of, we're sort of conservative religious people like sort of Jews and like conservative Christians. And that's a very different way of thinking about yourself in this country than the radical. And the coalitions with those conservative groups, that was obliterated in 2001, basically. So what has happened since then? Both of you.
I don't know that there were ever coalitions actually with conservative groups. I think that when Muslims did interfaith, it was mostly with liberal versions of those religions. Whereas Muslims tended to be probably the most socially conservative of the three.
But for example, Muslims still to this day, a lot of Muslims will say on like LGBT issues, they'll say, they'll want to team up with conservative groups.
Let me jump in. Dalia, what is the number, you have this number, I heard you say before, approximately of independents, Muslims that identify with, instead of being Democrat or Republican?
Yeah.
Because we did this in that.
Yeah,
we did that in that study.
Muslims are the most likely group to be independents, 35%.
Okay. So my read of that, and we don't have data on that, but my read on that is that politically active in the Muslim community before 2011 were registered Republicans. The prominent sort of donors and people that became the Abrahamic American voices and took over the institutions after 9/11 had actually been kind of Reaganites. They're very pro-capitalist, very socially conservative, and saw themselves very much in line with what Jack is saying, and adopted and kind of blended themselves, largely immigrant class. Population came over college educated in the 70s, or intended to be educated in college in the 70s. A lot of them I found to be socially conservative. Now what's interesting is that I think the data that you've done in that one report shows that they're an interesting kind of social conservative in that there's still a heavy mandate across the broad swath of American Muslims that calls for a very strong social welfare network in this country. And so they believe public funds can and should be used for welfare programs, for kind of a safety blanket, safety net programs in the United States. But as far as social policies themselves, I find the majority of the community we're extremely conservative and have a very hard time with some of the issues that Jack just raised, LGBT issues, family planning issues, and things like that. I don't think, I'll agree with you.
I think there's also a generational split. So there's two things that happened since 2001 or 2000. And you're right. I think that immigrant Muslims probably would identify more as Republican before 2000. But African American Muslims had always identified as Democrat. And what has happened since then is two things. I think that the Republican Party has become more and more alienating to Muslims. But there's also been a new generation of Muslims that has come of age. Sometimes we call them Generation 9/11, but they're Muslim young people who either came of age or were born after 9/11. And that community the idea of being a Republican is so alien to them. They wouldn't dream of it. They wouldn't fathom it. And they see themselves as very much in line with other marginalized communities versus other, conservative social classes. And the other thing I want to draw a parallel with other communities of color who traditionally identify as Democrat, but are socially conservative. So I think they would be very similar to Muslims.
Would you anticipate that Muslims would be, just kind of naturally fall into that coalitional style politics of the Latino American community, African American communities?
I definitely see that's where it's going. I think because of the generational shift and because of the experience of the last 15 years, the Republican Party has completely lost Muslims, I think.
I had a question. This is really excellent research and continues what you were doing earlier. You mentioned a lot of the social type of legislation, but you didn't mention how this kind of tendency correlates with anti-labor legislation. And I think that's an issue that also cuts across this whole idea of coalitions, because this cuts across also rural areas. The economic issues are something that we haven't addressed so much. We tend as Americans to get distracted by these cultural issues that seem to be so divisive across particularly religious and secular lines and liberal and conservative lines. But what's going on as we're not paying attention is the devastation of the increasing, vastly and rapidly increasing economic inequality in this country. And that is something I think that can help to heal that divide between people who are resentful towards, say, Trump voters or various other class divides that are there, that certainly in what you just mentioned about immigrants of the earlier generation, being recognized, and that group has been lost. But I just wonder if you did mention in any way your correlation with legislation and Islamophobia.
Yeah, so actually, one of the areas that had actually one of the largest overlaps. So there were two that had the largest overlap between, legislators who are proposing these and ones proposing anti-Muslim legislation, and those were actually anti-labor and voter suppression. Those were the two. So anti-labor and voter suppression had the were the most likely to coincide with anti-Sharia legislation being proposed at the state level. And anti-labor, were laws like right to work, where they were basically labor busting, breaking laws.
Minimum wage, stuff like
voter
that.
ID and so forth.
Yeah, minimum wage and things like that.
Yes. So I think you're right in that it's not, when you look at the different issue areas, many of them would be characterized as falling in, more of the Democratic Party. But with this last election, some Trump voters maybe would have fallen into a group that may have been affected by those anti-labor laws. And I'm still not sure what to think about that, because Trump is openly anti-labor, and yet he still had, he still has supporters that you would think economically are voting against their self-interest. So I'm not sure if that's a way to bridge the divide or not, because I think other things really are at play.
Great talks. I wanted to pick up on Abbas's categories or frameworks and just make a few comments about them. It seems to me that institutionally and institutional power has resided within the Abrahamic traditionalists, if you want to call them that. However, ethical power has more and more resided within the urban activist model. And I'm curious about what you think about the future, because they don't have money, they're young, but their voice on social media is very profound. And so the level of mosque boards and institutional power, they're swaying the old post 9/11 people in Messina sea change. I wonder if you see the same thing. I would also say that they are also actually influencing groups like ICNA, who are composed of the Abrahamic group as well as the Puritans. And so I see them as the new hegemonic force, particularly in the Trump era, when it won't be possible to work with government. They will be the ethical guiding light. And I wonder if you agree with that. And then what are the consequences of that? Because they're really funded by outside sources outside of Muslim community, like Soros Foundation. You think of Linda Sarsour, for example. Will the community support them? Or will they actually feel, like a lot of the neoclassical people feel, that we should not be a protest community, that it's too political, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so I do think that there's been a number of new voices to the table, and I haven't really sat down the way that I would and map how I think, let's say, like the unmosqued movement
Yeah,
would be
exactly.
categorized, or even, let's say, the kind of momentum that Linda represents. I don't know exactly how I've done that. I haven't done it yet, and I don't want to make any firm statements about it, but I will say that I do think you're right, that the center of gravity on the ethical and moral authority resides in these kinds of communities. So I would lump together a number of these politically or very highly socially conscious communities together, right? So you've got the traditional African American community spaces, and then you have your ICNA crowds that are involved in like humanitarian work. You've got these sort of this humanitarian Muslim mandate. People don't realize like Islamic Relief is got an over $100 million budget in the United States, and there's tons of aid. I've heard in some of the research I've done that there's something upwards $600 million of aid flows that come out of the American Muslim community that go abroad for development and charity work. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of money that's unaccounted for and not really thought of as kind of a source of power. And then you have highly active, integrated social justice movements. I do believe that all three of those have some kind of synergy, and they do conform to what you're saying, that being a kind of ethical center of gravity. I don't think that they will change the institutional framework that we see out there. No, I don't. I think that the micropolitics of these communities, of these institutions, the only network that I see lending itself in that direction is CARE. The CARE networks, the Council of American Islamic Relations, sort of the local chapters. That's the only place that I see a possibility of mainstream Muslim institutions moving in that direction. I believe that a lot of the organizations that exist because of like most organizations, have to stay very neutral, satisfy their donor bases, and I don't think that the donor bases are of the institutions are ready to move in that direction at all. I think that a lot of them are eager to participate in the American civic fabric, but I do not believe that they're ready to go into the direction that we're talking about with coalitional politics. I think that the younger generations will, rank and file, fill those political forces and those campaigns. But if a mosque, for example, in the middle of this environment, is still more prepared to fund to the tune of $500,000, an absolutely sort of, let's just say we get a new mosque every other day, and it's very easy to raise $2 to $4 to $7 million for a new mosque in any suburban community in America, and it could be a different class level. It's not just wealthy communities that are doing this. You could, in Clarkston, in Atlanta. Clarkston's a small community outside of Atlanta. It's one of the most highly populated, densely populated, cities in the entire United States. Most highly diverse. It's a kind of landing pad for all the refugees that come into the Atlanta area, because Atlanta is a kind of designated refugee resettlement zone. And in that community, highly indigent, working class, barely above poverty level, everything. And in that community, the priority amongst the funders and the entire Atlanta area Muslim community is to build a new mosque, not to fund the refugee clinic down the street, much less an advocacy group that we're thinking about, And and that's just Atlanta. I know that there's similar patterns around the country, so I don't believe that the institutions that we think, the educational institutions, the advocacy and research organizations, are prepared to move in that direction.
Can I have a follow-up point?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think, though, that the center of gravity institution is still very diffuse, in the sense that we're seeing thought leaders within the American Muslim space beginning to fall in line with the ethical center of power of this kind of young millennial social justice first approach? You seem skeptical, but I think it's actually happening.
Give me an example.
I think the fallout after the RIS thing is
3
almost
weeks.
like a sort of...
It's like 3 weeks.
Anyways, I don't want to get into the weeds,
Basically,
but...
I think one example would be the Mass ICNA conferences. So Mass Muslim American Societies teams up with ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, which is like the South Asian kind of partner of ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. Their conferences are they've become really sort of activist.
Absolutely.
But Mass has always been there. Mass has
but
always been.
but not ICNA. I mean,
Much more.
these groups, you go to the conferences and there's, it's the conference hall is so big, it's like a airplane hangar.
And they're supporting Black
Absolutely.
Lives Matter there too, I believe.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, and
Absolutely.
then ISNA also is starting to go in that direction because it's losing people who go to the other conference, and no one wants to go to ISNA. If you're a Muslim in this country now, and you're not getting active, then you're either burying your head in the ground, or it's just less and less possible, I think, to be sort of like, oh, I don't want to get involved with this stuff.
No, I agree with you.
But also, another thing which I think is interesting, and this we discussed yesterday, I disagree with some people who were saying this. I think it's actually safer to be active today than it was 10 years ago.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't believe the kind of stuff that you can say now in polite society. 10, 15 years ago, if you said this stuff, you would have been a pariah. Using the words, criticizing the police, things like Black Lives Matter. This was like a huge change. The idea, when you have dozens of videos of black men getting shot for no reason, no one can deny this is a problem. Okay, at that point, you can say, I think I can criticize the police now. I think I can criticize the government. This I think was a big change. So I think it's back in the 2000s, late 90s, a lot of immigrant Muslims, they didn't want to get involved with this stuff because they had a good deal going. They don't want to rock the boat. Now the boat's getting rocked for them, and you either try and work against that, but there's no real sense in not doing anything.
No, I agree with you, and I will concede that there's a massive shift at the rhetorical levels. But one has to realize that even though ISNA and ICNA conferences are huge, they don't. ICNA has a much more grassroots level, kind of chapter level, national model, and I see them operating in patterns that are consistent over the last decade of social service orientation and things like this. ISNA is just a conference. ISNA is just a big conference, and so it might have a plethora of panels here or there, but it always moves in whatever direction is politically expedient at the moment. What I am concerned about is that how do we measure long-term change, and if gender, for example, was at the front of the mandate, equal access, in just mosque spaces. I mean, that's been like a 20-year conversation. And how are mosques built? All right, today, what's moved that conversation in any more direction? Do we have women on boards at a representational level at the extent that we thought we would have 15 years ago? I don't think so. And I'm naturally skeptical as a person, but
A third of American mosques do have women on their board.
they have women on their board. Okay, but I understand that, but
Yeah.
at the numbers that we expected 15 years ago, at the level of influence that we expected 15 years ago.
I mean, I don't know what we expected 15 years ago, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become at least something that people are recognizing. There's ISNA signed a couple of years ago, sort of, or initiated a campaign where mosques would sign on to this idea of a mosque that had greater gender access and gender equality, which is something that if 15 years ago, if someone had suggested, it would have been a conversation.
Yes.
It would have ended. So on that front, things are there is some progress.
And we did know at ISP, you remember last year at ISNA when we had that little workshop for ISP, there are major changes. 20 years ago, you wouldn't be able to register a voter at an ISNA conference, right? It would have been a completely different conversation. And now it's a hub. So, I can definitely concede.
Let's take two questions.
There's one behind you, Chad.
Not at the end of the back here.
Thank you to both speakers for your talk. It's Dalia. Regarding the media, when you say the media, it's a bit of generalization, I guess, all the media. There are multiple levels of media, like the live radio talkback show, the community radio, so like run by the Islamophobia industry, you say. But then again, after this election, I find that as opposed to the Fox, CNN is playing quite a positive role, voicing Muslim opinion of the issues. So, is it okay to generalize the media, or just to see which media is doing what? Because I think there can be some
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, the research that I'm referring to did look across the board from Fox to CNN to MSNBC, and I was shocked by how how little difference there actually was, at least in the years that they looked at, which the last one was 2015. MSNBC wasn't any better than CNN. CNN was slightly better than Fox, but when I say media, I mean major news, TV news media.
Thank you. And a question for Abbas, please. It's regarding the mosque. As you said, in Atlanta, people tend to, if they have money. I guess the building of mosque is more of a drive from the first generation diasporic community to build a mosque and have an icon, is cultural icon. But as for the mosque attendance, are the young generation, second and third generation, are attending the mosque as much as the older generation, first generation? And again, there can be good attendance during Jummah, but not 5 times a day, 7 days a week. So how do you place the mosque? Is it, if somebody builds a mosque, it becomes an immediate threat? The diasporic community, immigrant community, they're talking about their culture, and that becomes a bubble there and a group there. But young people, as I found in my research or my observation when I used to go to the mosque with my children, sometimes it's in the Jummah prayer, but throughout the week, people are too busy.
In general, of course, most mosques are like that. There's always a kind of question about, how much of the community is actually mosqued. I don't know, but I will say that in general, just like ethnicity or ideological divisions, those kind of hard breaks, I also don't include a generational divide in sort of my mapping, because I'm concerned about the way institutions talk, in the sense that, not on a press release or something like that, but what is the discourse of the social milieux around the mosque? And in that space, I will always find young people just as invested in the mosque building projects as anywhere else. And at most, what's happened now is, in addition to the mosque building project, you will find an impetus for the educational program. So educational programming always starts, in multiple layers, but there's a push for kind of serious Islamic studies. And I kind of group those together. So the younger generation might be more institutionally savvy and better with fundraising and things like that, and might think in more creative ways to build around that. But the younger, so-called younger crowd that's hanging around the mosque is still absorbing and embodying the discourses that I see dominated that mosque building initiative and that impetus. And so, again, there's not a generational divide as I see it.
I'm not sure that my question is really very similar, in the sense of, you do have in the Christian and Jewish American communities, there's lower and lower involvement. I mean, how is that comparable in the Islamic community?
We actually looked at that. We at ISPU, we have a major project called Reimagining Muslim Spaces, and the whole project, from our research to our test sites to our recommendations, is about solving the question of how to make mosques more inclusive and welcoming of young people, women, and converts. And so the first thing we did is we just looked at the numbers across faith communities, and age groups. And what we found is that across the board, as you mentioned, young people are less likely to report going to a religious service once a week. So that it's not a Muslim-only problem or a Muslim-only issue. And that Muslims weren't dramatically, in terms of age difference, there wasn't actually, interestingly, as dramatic of a difference between generations in terms of mosque attendance as there was in other faith communities. So the normal kind of pattern is that young people are less likely to go to a religious service, and in the Muslim community, the problem is actually less severe, not more severe.
Yeah, I remember one quote. I was listening to you one time, I don't know if it was in person or in a lecture on TV. You had said that sort of American Muslim attitudes towards religion and public life map exactly American attitudes. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, they map exactly, especially Protestant attitudes. Protestant American attitudes, which, the plurality.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the percentage of people who say that they go to a religious service once a week, exact same number, literally exactly the same number. The percentage of people who say religion's an important part of their daily life, Muslims and Protestants are identical.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because even though they're they're very similar in their religious patterns, politically they've become very different. Their political priorities are very different.
I don't say this just because I'm sitting next to Dalia or because I'm a fellow of ISP, but ISP is really the only place that you're going to find data at the level that is available to really give you an objective talking point statement about what the American Muslim community is. You can take all the qualitative stuff from our scholars here or there, but it's the only place you can find empirical data. So if you haven't already availed yourself of those materials, please do look them up.
And just to put in a plug, we're actually next month we're going to release our second wave of our American Muslim poll post-election. So I think it'll be very interesting in people how Muslims, Jews, Catholics, Protestants, and non-affiliated Americans feel after the election.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, so it seemed like we started framing this conversation as the American Muslim community moving forward and allying with and making coalitions with other groups. But the way I see it, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, there's still a lot of divisions within this American Muslim community, whether on race, can we really say that our Black Muslim brothers and sisters can rely on immigrant Muslims as allies and things like that, or on sectarianism even seeping in from the Arab world. And so, I mean, something I struggle with and want to ask about is how do we move forward? What can we do balancing, what most Muslims have realized is a duty to be active and ally with other communities and find areas of shared struggle, while also balancing, the need to still create this Muslim community that, is still kind of fractured. And I don't know if that's something you've struggled with or, have.
No, actually, we absolutely, we have been looking at that. And so one of my jobs is to travel around the country and give talks to Muslim communities. So that's usually my audience. I work for an organization that is secular that studies Muslims, and I talk to policymakers and media and stuff like that, but I also do a lot of work speaking to Muslims. And my message is always, basically for the past 6 months, has been the same, which is we have to heal and then we have to build coalitions. They don't have to happen in sequence, but we have to do both. And healing is about healing those fractures, whether they're along racial lines, sectarian lines, gender lines. That has to happen. And if the urgency of the moment doesn't propel that to happen, I don't know what will. But that is definitely this healing on the inside and building coalitions on the outside. They're both absolutely necessary.
One of the areas that's been really illuminating for me is, as I've surveyed these civil society groups across the Atlantic, really, is that I'm seeing a trend, and I'm invested in this personally, so it's kind of wishful thinking as well, but there's definitely a trend that I'm seeing, and that is social service institutions, really the charities and humanitarian organizations. There's been a shift in the nature of these organizations, whereas let's say in the 90s especially, and even throughout the 2000s, the charities were specifically tailored towards kind of diasporal networks. Right? And the overwhelming majority were going towards just sort of one community's network to go service a flood zone here or a flood zone there. And you still see a tremendous amount of that. But with the emergence of an organization like Islamic Relief Worldwide, and then the USA chapter, and then other groups that are basically falling in line with the tracks that are set there, what you find is this sort of shared commitment to domestic service and humanitarian work across the interfaith spectrum and across a kind of, by Muslims but for everybody sort of mandate.
Yeah.
Domestically and internationally. So whereas a lot of people, I think, have gotten extremely skepticism of involvement in politics, formal politics, you see the momentum, the activist momentum sort of move into this humanitarian space. You see a drying up of funding where, I could go to a fundraiser for Hamza Yusuf 10 years ago, and it was like a no-brainer, that you would raise whatever he asked for. And he came, I'll see something recently, and it's, you're pulling teeth, because the commitments that people are making are for social services and humanitarian work. And people overwhelmingly concerned about just delivering the aid to the most vulnerable and needy, and that's a shared platform. as long as the conversation is consistent. So are we going to talk about Flint and Palestine and Syria and are we going to do those together? And it doesn't mean that we have to do those equally, right? Because they have different demands. But I see Islamic relief in some of those spaces to be the place where some of these divisions are being healed through praxis. They're already taking place. And so you will find a very eclectic, interesting group where my discourses completely collapse. My categories completely collapse in those kind of spaces. It's very interesting.
I'm actually heading to Flint on Thursday.
Are you really?
Yes.
Nice. And I'm going to Islamic relief after this.
Not to do anything useful. I'm going to be giving a talk. But my talk is about the Muslim effort in alleviating the Flint water crisis, because we did tons of research. We have a project called Muslims for American Progress, and basically it documents the contributions of Michigan Muslims to everybody's welfare. But in the process of doing this research, we sort of stumbled on the effort in Flint, which was really inspiring. Everything from medical care to water to suing the government, all
That's great.
all led by Muslims in Flint. It was really.
Have you guys written that up yet?
We have an infographic right now. So if you go to muslimsforamericanprogress.org or .com and go under research, you'll find this basically it's like a poster that has all of the numbers.
It's not an ISP, is it an ISP?
We have it on ISPU too, but we wanted to have it actually a separate website. It's an
Great.
ISPU project,
Great.
but we wanted it to be almost its own brand so that it would have more legs. So it's muslimsforamericanprogress.com or .org, and you can read narratives and you can also read about the research.
Excellent.
So let me ask one last question before we go. What do you, and I don't know, Dalia, if you've ever asked this question or serious, what do American Muslims want this country to look like in 50 years?
No, we've never asked that question.
What do you think the answer is? If you had to guess. Both of you.
I think, I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not very good at predicting the future, but what I believe many people would have said is we want it to look like it did before 9/11. I think that's the wrong answer, but I think that's the impulse people usually have, is like, if we could just go back to this imagined world that actually never existed, where everybody was, everybody loved everybody else, and there were rainbows and unicorns, and it's not. There's a imagined memory of a perfect America before 9/11, which I definitely never experienced, and I remember very well working against Islamophobia as a college student, which, trust me, was before 9/11. So this is a very long history. The New York Times was 25 years of covering Islam worse than cocaine and cancer. It wasn't just 15 years. So I think that's what people think they want. Because they were sort of aspiring, well, at least I'll say what many immigrants and children of immigrants think they want, is they were aspiring to be included into the dominant culture, which they were never going to be included, but they thought they were going to be included, and so they were working for that. A suburban Islam that was going to just be assimilated into everything that was America. And into the so-called American dream. And that was a delusion then, and it's definitely a delusion now. I think that what we have to do is completely reimagine what America is and our place in it, and then in so doing imagine what that 50 years will be. It's a place that's much more equal for everyone, and when we work for that kind of America, it will be better for Muslims. It's not going back to when it was great, because it never actually was great.
Any last words, Abbas, regarding that?
Yeah, I think that the genetic codes have already been set a long time ago, and that's just sort of my kind of longue durée vision of this. I think that the trends and trajectories were actually established in between the 70s and early 90s, and I don't know if there's anything Even though you have 9/11, even though you have somebody like Trump, I don't believe American Muslim communities have gotten out of the framework of some of these spaces. So this radical reimagining that you're calling for is a necessary step, but I don't see a space that allows for something like that. I think for the most part, you've got the spectrum of kind of social justice to a kind of center Democrat vision in the American Muslim community about what America might look like. So kind of a far left to the center Democrat space. You know, you got American Muslims, I think, that are perfectly comfortable aspiring and looking and acting a whole lot like the Jewish American community. And you've got others that would like to see a revitalized and socially empowered, organic, grassroots, inner city kind of environment. And again, I think that those bounds have been set a long time ago. I don't see us moving outside of those boundaries.
You know, interestingly, both those groups you mentioned are either urban or suburban, prosperous suburban.
Yeah.
And if you looked at sort of Trump versus non-Trump America, you know, you probably find the prosperous suburban bit contested a little bit, but you could map those onto kind of Trump, non-Trump too.
It's interesting.
In the U.S. Anyway, thanks very much for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks to our guests.
Thanks for making it up.